Masechet Sukkah, Daf Lamed 30. We have a lot of important topics, including ethical sourcing. When you buy something, and you know it's stolen, can you still buy it? What if you're just not sure if it's stolen or not? We're going to come to a sugya that's relevant for that. But first, yesterday, I, by mistake, skipped one paragraph, and it's really an essential paragraph. So I'm just going to start with that, and then we'll go on from where we picked up, from where we left off. So I'm on 29a near the top, and it says here, Amar Rava, Mane Mishteya Bim Talalta. Any drinking utensils, cups, glasses, they should stay in the sukkah. We're talking about that in the sukkah, you should live there like you live in your house, and therefore bring out all your fine china, and that includes drinking cups, and let them stay there because they stay clean, right? Just take a drink, and then you take a drink later, use the same cup or a different cup, whatever, but you could leave them out. They're not disgusting. Whereas maneh mechla bar memet halalta, eating utensils, those become dirty and smelly, and therefore you don't want to leave them in. So yeah, while you're eating, you bring it out, but then when they're dirty, take them back inside to clean. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation that could go along with it also is pots and pans, things that you use to prepare the food. Those are also dirty and not respectful. You don't bring them into your dining room, and therefore don't bring them into your sukkah either. Okay, good. Now, chatzba v'shachil, earthenware jug, wicker basket. Here's an example of one. A wicker basket looks like this. These items, bar memet talalta, you should take them outside the sukkah. These are made for drawing water or carrying things. Ushraga bim talalta, whereas a lantern should remain in the sukkah because you want it there so that it can bring light. So that's for the kavod of the sukkah. The other things don't belong in a dining room, and therefore don't belong in a sukkah. Regarding the lamp, other people say, no, keep it out of the sukkah. So which one is it? If it's a large sukkah, then you can keep the lamp in. Small, then don't. What's the reason? Because a lamp, we're talking about after the lamp goes out, and then it has an odor, especially if it's made out of clay, it becomes disgusting. So if it's a small sukkah, get it out of there because there's no room for it and you're going to smell it. If it's a large sukkah, you can put it on the other side and it's not offensive looking and the smell won't bother you. So it depends if it's a small or large sukkah. But the other items, drinking vessels, keep in there all the time. Eating vessels that become dirty, pots and pans, keep them out. Okay, that's the sugya. This is a very relevant sugya for halacha l'maaseh, which is that on Simchat Torah in Chutz La'aretz, sometimes people say it's nice out and they want to eat in the sukkah. So on Shemini Aseret, on the 8th day of the holiday, we have to eat in the sukkah midrabanan because maybe it's still the last day of Sukkot, so we eat there. But on the last day of Simchat Torah, one is not allowed. Baal Tosif, you can't add. The Torah said 7 days. Okay, the rabbi said another one because we're not sure. But the 9th day, Simchat Torah, for sure you can't. You can't add. And if you're going to sit in the sukkah, it looks like you're adding to the mitzvah of the Torah, which is a problem. But what if you want to because it's nice out or because you have a lot of people over and there's a lot more room there? So this comes up many years. And Shulchan Aruch says that if you treat the sukkah in a disrespectful way, then it shows I'm not sitting in the sukkah as a mitzvah, as a holy place. Therefore, here's what you should do: if it's a small sukkah, bring a lamp out, or if it's a big sukkah, bring some pots and pans and put them in the sukkah on the last day. So I've done that, and other people have done that. So you put a pot or two in the sukkah. Everybody's like, "What's this pot doing here?" Oh, this shows you're treating it just like a pantry, like a kitchen, not like a dining room, and not with respect. And therefore, you're showing that you don't have in mind that you're fulfilling a mitzvah of sukkah, and then it's not Baal Tosif anymore. In Israel, they don't have this problem because if they want to sit if they want to sit outside, they can just undo something in the sukkah before the holiday. starts at the very end of Hoshana Rabbah. But in Chutz La'aretz, we can't do that because we still have to sit in there on Shemini Aseret. Okay, so now we officially finished the second perek because we filled that in. And we could return to where we were, which is Lulav HaGazul VeHayavesh. A lulav cannot be stolen or all dried out. And now we're wondering why. Here's a picture of a lulav that's all dried out. This would not be permitted. And so we're wondering on which day are we talking about, right? The Mishnah just says it's not allowed. And it sounds like there's no difference between the first day and all the other days. So the Mishnah doesn't say either way if it's talking about the first day or not. We're going to see an opinion that says it's only talking about the first day. But if you just read the Mishnah, it seems like it's talking about all the days. And our question is, why? So regarding Yavesh, we understand why. The Pasuk says, Piri Ayetz Hadar. It has to be beautiful. And that applies to all of the four species. If it's dried out, the lulav or any of the four species, it's not beautiful, so you're not fulfilling Hadar. And that applies on all 7 days of the holiday. The first day in which it's Deoraita, and the other 6 days in which it's Derabanan. In the Bet HaMikdash, mitzvah lulav was Deoraita all 7 days, because the pasuk says, "Usmachtem lifnei Adonai Elohechem shivat yamim." Lifnei Hashem means in the Bet HaMikdash, and that's 7 days. But we're not talking about in the Bet HaMikdash. This Mishnah is talking about for everybody else, regular people, and nowadays. So the first day is Chayav Deoraita. The rest of the days is Rabbanan. Nevertheless, the word Hadad applies to all the 7 days. When the rabbi said you have to take it in that way and apply Hadad. So we're good with that. Our question was about Gazul. If you can't use a stolen lulav. Well, why not? I mean, I know it's not nice to steal, and that's a separate prohibition. But just because I violated one thing, why should that mean that I can't take that lulav that I grabbed from someone and then go ahead and shake it? So we understand the first day because Pasuk says Ulkachtem lachem bayom harishon. So specifically on the first day, there is a prohibition, there's a requirement rather, that has to be yours. You have to own it. Not only can it be stolen, you can't borrow it from someone, right? It has to be something that you bought or someone gave it to you as a gift. That applies to the first day. But it does not apply to the other 6 days. So how come the Mishnah says that Lulav HaGazul is prohibited, and it doesn't say a time period, so we assume it's all 7 days. What is the reason? So we gave an answer already yesterday, and the answer was it's in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Mishum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that it is a mitzvah haba'a ba'avera. In other words, on the first day, you have a problem of ulkachtem lachem, in addition, but on the all 7 days, you'll have this problem that it's a mitzvah that's coming on the heels of, because of a transgression. You wouldn't have this lulav if you didn't steal it. So therefore, you only could do the mitzvah because you have it by theft. And therefore, that undoes the mitzvah, right? Not only did you violate stealing, you also don't get the mitzvah. What's the source? How do we know that a mitzvah that comes through a transgression is not even a mitzvah? Well, we could learn it from a korban. Malachi says, Hevetem Gazul. God says, you bring me something stolen. We think I want that? It's like bringing me something lame. Now a lame animal is permanently lame. So too, we're talking about a case of stealing something, and it's permanently unwanted and no good at this korban. Now, why should something that you steal be permanently no good? So here's a loophole regarding stealing. If I steal something and the owner gives up on finding it, right? Let's say it's some kind of item that's not identifiable. This is true, by the way, for losing something. Right? If someone dropped a $20 bill, there's no identifying mark, there's no way to find it. So the person that loses it said, "Oh, I lost $20, I dropped it. Oh, well, too bad." Once he says, "Oh, well," right? So then he gives up on finding it. That's called Yeush. So finder, that means finder's keepers in that case, right? And the same thing is true with stealing it. Even if I grabbed a $20 bill from someone, run away, if he has no chance of catching me and gives up Yeush, then that's my $20, right? I own it. Not that I still have to give it back. A better example is if I use an item. Let's say I steal some wood from someone, and I take it off his truck. I take the wood. I run home and I build a piece of furniture. Now, at that point, okay, I'm getting into something else, which is Yeush plus a change. I'm just going to give a little intro about Yeush because it's going to be relevant as we come along. So if I steal some wood and the guy says, I'm never going to find this guy. Oh, well, too bad. I lost the wood. That's Yeush. So at that point, now I own the wood. So for example, if the guy would come back and say, hey, give me my wood back, I don't have to give it back. I can give him money instead. So I do have to return something, but it could just be money. According to another opinion, not only do I need Yeush, I also have to do something with the wood. If I build furniture out of it, so then there's Yeush, the owner gave up on it, and I changed something about it and turned it into something else. So then, according to all opinions, I would never have to give back that wood. I would have to pay him for the value of the wood, even double of it, but not actually give it back. Okay, so that's the intro. So back to this. What we said yesterday is that if I steal something and the owner did not have Yeush, then for sure I have to give it back. It's not mine. But if the owner did have Yeush, according to one opinion, that's sufficient, and now it's mine, and nevertheless, it's called Gazul and Piseach, because just like Piseach, it can never be used, so too Gazul can never be used, not even after Yeush. So the same thing is true here regarding Lulav. If I stole it, whether there's Yeush or not, in other words, whether the ownership transferred to me or not, doesn't matter. I'm not allowed to use it because that's called mitzvah haba'a ba'avera, right? And that's what we learned. So why can't I use it? It's not actually stolen if the owner gives up hope, because then the item does transfer to me. I have to pay him back, but the item is now mine. So it's not actually stolen. So rather, the reason must be that it's a mitzvah ba'avera. This applies to the animal, not giving it as a sacrifice, and also it applies to the lulav, which I can't use even if it's technically I transferred into my ownership. Okay, good. That was the reason that we said yesterday. We're going to add another source for this and a parable that really nails it down. Same attribution as the previous statement, and so it makes sense he's adding to it. Pasuk from Yeshaya, which is really interesting. It says, I am Hashem, I love justice. You know what I hate? I hate robbery when it comes to a burnt offering. There's a strange pasuk. It could have just said, Soneh gazel. God says, I hate robbery of any kind. But yet it adds a word, I hate when people rob an animal and then offer it to me as a burnt offering. So what's this about? Why does it add a burnt offering specifically? Is it only that? If you steal something else, it's okay? So the answer is that no, it means even a burnt offering, where a burnt offering, the robber gets no personal benefit from it. He doesn't eat any part of it. Nobody eats any part of it. So the robber might think, look, I'm giving the whole thing to God, right? And I got no benefit. So God will surely like that. God says, no, I hate robbery. I don't want gifts at all. And I certainly don't want a gift that you stole. That's not a happy gift for me because I love justice. So what's the mashal? Mashal lemelech basav adam shehaya oved al bet hameches amar la'avadav. So you have a king, a human king, and he's going to the customs house, figure like a toll booth, and he tells his servants, "Tenu meches lamochsim, pay the toll, pay the customs official." So and as we go through. So the servants say, what do you mean? All the taxes just goes to you. You're the king. You own everything. So you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay the toll. You're just going to get it back and put it back in your pocket. So you should go free. No, I want to do it to show that everybody else that they should not try to get out of paying the customs. Even I, the king, pay it, and so too I want to be an example that everybody else will pay it too. So God says, even though everything in the world belongs to me, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, if you're giving an olah, there's no such thing as stealing it because it all belonged to him in the first place. Nevertheless, Hashem says, I'm going to specifically reject an olah because I want to set an example. Yes, I own everything, but you don't own everything. And therefore, if you steal something, from somebody else, then you're doing a terrible thing. So, to bring a modern example, someone owns a store, and so he owns everything in the store. If he wants to, take a drink from his grocery store, so he doesn't have to pay for it. He could just take it. Nobody says, no, I'm going to take money out of my pocket, put it in the cash register, and pay for it. Even though at the end of the day, the cash is everything in the cash register is going to go back into my pocket. I want to set an example. They don't just take things. They don't shoplift. I want all the other workers. I want all the other shoppers to show and learn from that. Okay, so that's another reason behind the law of that you can't do a mitzvah through a transgression. Itmar nameh, another statement supporting everything we've just said. Amar bi ameh, itmar nameh, amar bi ameh, yavesh pasul mipnei she'en hadar. Why can you not bring a dried out lulav? Because it's not beautiful, and that applies all the days. Gazul pasul mishum davar mitzvah ba'a ba'avera, and the stolen lulav is no good because you came to it through a transgression, and that also applies all the time, all 7 days. So if you take a stolen lulav on the first day, you have two problems of lachem and this, but all 7 days this applies. Okay, good. All that was one opinion, that the Mishnah that says lulav hagazul hayavesh applies all 7 days. The first day when it's doraita, and the rest of the days when it's Rabbanan, and you don't have ukachtem lachem, all the days it applies. Now we're going to see a second opinion that says the Mishnah only applies on the first day. Ufiligad Rabbi Yitzchak, Damar Rabbi Yitzchak, Bar Nachmani Amar Shemuel, Lo shenu ela beyom tov rishon, aval beyom tov sheni, mitoch sheyoseh b'shaul, yoseh nameh begazul. He says we only learn this Mishnah. It's only true on the first day of Yom Tov, the first day of the holiday. But on the second day of the holiday, when it says here Yom Tov Sheni, when we say that term, we think of Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galuyot, outside of Israel, and the second day is also Yom Tov. But it doesn't mean that here. Here it means the second day of the holiday, which in Israel would be Chol HaMoed. They're still calling it the second day of the Yom Tov, of what started off as Yom Tov. Okay, so the second day of the holiday, when, even though it's Midrabanan now, and everyone agrees that you can take a borrowed lulav, not a stolen one, but I can borrow your lulav and it'll be okay. On the first day, I can't borrow your lulav. If you have a lulav and I don't have one, and I want to fulfill my mitzvah, you have to give it to me as a gift, and then I'll give it back to you as a gift. That's permitted, but I'm not borrowed if it's actually yours. But on the second day to the sixth day, I can borrow yours. It stays in your ownership. I'm just using it. That's permitted. So he says, just like you can use something that's sha'ul, you can also use gazul. Basically, he doesn't have a problem of mitzvah ba'avera. He doesn't think that that's an issue here. He only has a problem of ulkachtem lachem, that you have to own it, and that owning it only applies on the first day and not any of the other days. Okay, amazing. That's what Rabbi Yitzchak says. Now, we have a challenge to him. Mativ Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, lulav hagazul v'hayavesh pasul. Now, he's quoting our Mishnah that says lulav hagazul and yavesh are both no good. Ha-sha'ul kasher. So I can make an inference. I assume the Mishnah is going to give the biggest chidush, the thing that you have to know the most. So if the Mishnah says that stolen lulav is no good, then that means if it's only borrowed, that's better, right? Better borrowed than stolen. So stealing something stolen is much more stringent. So if the Mishnah says something stolen is no good, that means if I borrowed it, it would be good. So now we can, based on that inference, we can ask, Emat, what day are you talking about? If the Mishnah is talking about the first day, but the first day, that wouldn't be true because the Pasuk says it has to be yours and v'hai lavdidehu. And this, if I borrowed it, then it's not mine. So the Mishnah cannot be talking about the first day because then it would have to say lulav hasha'ul is pasul, but it doesn't. It only says gazul, which implies we're looking for a day when borrowing is okay, but stealing is not. Rather, the Mishnah must be talking about not the first day, but the second through the 6 days, through the sixth day. And on those days, and the inference is true. If I borrow it, it's okay. And so on that day specifically, the Mishnah says stolen is no good. So he just proved them that the Mishnah has to be like the reading we saw before in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that all 7 days, a stolen lulav is no good. and not just the first day. So this is a good challenge to the Yitzchak. How is he going to answer it? Lami baya Shaul delav didehu, aval gazul ema stam gezela yeush pe'alimhu, uchedide dameh ka mashma lahan. Changes our expectation. We thought that stealing something is definitely going to be worse than borrowing it. But this is not necessarily, because Shaul, if I borrow something, it's for sure not mine. Definitely not mine. We all agree, I just borrowed it. But if I steal something from you and you give up on finding it, then the ownership of the item actually transfers to me. There is a mechanism for me to acquire something that I stole once you despair of finding it. So I might think that so therefore the Mishnah says not only Shaul doesn't even have to tell us that a borrowed one is no good. It's really talking about the first day when borrowing is not good. And not only that, even you might have thought that something stolen is okay because I stole it and he didn't see me and there's no way he's going to find me, and therefore ownership transfers over to me. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says even Gazul is no good, and certainly Shaul. Okay, so really interesting logic there, where there's such a possibility that borrowing wouldn't be good, but stealing would be okay. Not the stealing part. Again, of course, you're violating a prohibition of stealing, but a question is, since it's now mine, you might have thought I could fulfill the mitzvah. Okay, so now that's the two opinions of the interpretation of the Mishnah, either saying that a gazul is no good all 7 days, or maybe only the first day. So that closes that topic of interpretation of the Mishnah. And now we get to this source that's about ethical sourcing, right? And we're talking about lulavim that you're going to buy, and you have a suspicion that they came from stolen land. You buy a Prada bag on the street. And so let's say you're not sure. Is it for sure stolen? You don't know for sure. Maybe it is. How much do you have to investigate to see whether it's stolen or not? Is it okay to buy it if you know for sure it's stolen? So we're going to apply this to lulav. Rav Huna went to these merchants. These are Jewish merchants. They're middlemen. They're buying lulavim from farmers, non-Jewish farmers, and they're selling them to Jews. And Rav Huna is giving them the following advice. Ki zavnitu asami goyim lo tigzezu atun ela ligazezu inhu ve'avu lechu. Listen, when you go and buy the myrtle, the hadassim branches from these non-Jewish farmers, you shouldn't be the one to cut them, right? Don't do the labor and go out and say, I'll cut them. Rather, let them do the cutting and give it to you. Okay, why? How is that better if they do the cutting and give it to you? My tama, stam goyim gazlane ara'ata ninhu. We have to assume that in general, these goyim who are selling the myrtles stole the land. They're on stolen land. It did happen in certain times in history that officials of the Roman Empire would steal land from Jews. This happened before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And so it's not for sure that they stole it, but we can assume a lot of this land was stolen originally from someone else. So this non-Jewish farmer who's selling you the myrtles, they might be stolen goods. So this is not good. So how are we gonna solve this? Here's a problem. Land cannot be stolen. What does that mean, land cannot be stolen? It can't have the status of something stolen. Whereas something movable, I take it, I steal it from you, I grab it out of your hands. Now it's in my possession. So if it's in my possession, and then I take it away and you give up on finding it, so then that it's possible for the ownership to transfer to me. Land, however, I can't grab onto land. So even if I go and I sit on the land and I use it and harvest it, and you can't do anything about it, and even if this goes on for a while, nevertheless, the land never actually transfers ownership. So there's no way to transfer ownership of land. And even if the original owner has Yeush, says, I'm never going to get this land back. This Roman thug, I'm never going to be able to take him to court. Nevertheless, even if there is Yeush, the land does not transfer ownership. So that's good in a way that you can always go and get your land back, but it's bad in terms of the law of lulav hagazul, because in order for the lulav to be usable and for a mitzvah, there has to be some case where the owner gave up, had yeush, and now the stolen property becomes property of the person who's going to sell it to me in turn. So therefore, since karka is not stolen, if the merchant would go and cut it directly from off of the land, now the land is stolen property, and even though he's taking it, so it can't have yeush while it's attached to the ground. So we want to add another step. Hilkach ligzezu inhu ki hechid leve yeush ba'alim bidaihu didhu v'shinui areshut bi'adaihu. Therefore, this is the way you should do it. Let the non-Jew cut it off the branch, cut it off the field. Now that it's cut off the field, it's a movable item. So while the non-Jew has it, it's a movable thing. He stole it, but the original owner, he knows he's never going to get the land back, and he's never going to get the myrtles back either. So now that they're movable, he will have yeush. According to this opinion, however, yeush is not enough to transfer ownership. You need something else. A yeush and some kind of change. One type of change that works is a change of hands. So since the non-Jew has it, he's the one that cut it, and the owner had yeush, and now the non-Jew takes it, transfers it to the merchant. So that through that yeush plus transfer of hands, that will effectuate a legal change in the status of ownership, and now it's in the possession and ownership of the merchant, and the owner no longer has possession of it. When I go and buy it from the merchant, now I can use it for a mitzvah. So that's his advice. Whereas if the merchant would do both, the merchant would take it and transfer it. Well, we're going to see that in a second. So sof ki gazezu avant kiri leve yeush ba'alim bidaihu v'shinui reshut bi'adan. Now the Gemara asks the question on Rav Huna's advice. Why do you need to do all that? If the middleman, that Jewish middleman, if he goes and cuts the myrtle, so he's holding on to the myrtle, he basically stole it, which is bad for him. But now the owner has yeush. We assume the owner gives up because some Roman thug took his land. So there is yeush, and now when the merchant transfers it to your hands when you buy it, so you have a change of hands. So now you have the two things that you need: yeush and a change of hands. So really, you don't need Rav Huna's advice. You don't have to bother the non-Jews that they should be the ones to cut it down. I mean, maybe it'd be better in terms of stealing that they're the ones that are stealing it, not the merchant. But in terms of you, the buyer, fulfilling your mitzvah, it's equally good. So we answer, La Sericha be'oshana devan kiri gufayhu. Rav Huna was giving the advice not for the benefit of the buyers, but for the benefit of the middlemen themselves, because they also need a lulav set that they're going to use. They're Jewish merchants. So he says, for yours that you're going to take home, make sure that first the non-Jew cuts it. That way it'll be in his hands as a movable item upon which yeush can apply. And then the non-Jew will give it over to your hands, and then you have a transfer of possession, and that transfer of possession will then change the ownership status. And that way, you, the merchant, can go and take it home and use it for lulav. That's what Rav Huna was talking about. Okay, good. So now we understand that. Now, just a couple of other questions about that advice. There are other ways that they could have done it. Why do you have to, why bother the merchant that the merchant has to go and cut it all? Why not let the non-Jew cut it and let the merchant cut it down, and the merchant will have it for himself. And you know what the merchant can do to acquire it? Because he has to do some kind of action, some kind of change. Well, he can do something to the myrtle branch itself. For example, tie it up. Right? You know how we have a lulav and we take all the lulav and the two types of branches and we put a tie around them because we want to hold it together. So there you go. By doing something with it, that affects the change. Just like if I steal wood and I make furniture out of it. So if you have yeush and I change something about the thing that I stole, then it becomes mine. Or if I steal grain from you and I make bread out of it, and then you come back, you come and find me and says, oh, give me that bread. That's my grain. I could tell you, no, I changed the item already. I'll pay you for the grain, but I don't have to give it back. I don't have to give the actual grain back to you. Now I acquired it. So too here, by taking that myrtle branch, the merchant himself can do the cutting, take it home. By tying it, he's making a change. So isn't that good enough? Why does he have to go through the extra step of making the non-Jew cut it down? The answer is kasavad lulav en tzarich eged. Maybe Rav Huna thought that lulav does not need to be tied, does not need to be bound, and therefore maybe I'll bind it for convenience sake. But binding it is not changing anything of its status. It's interesting that in this halacha, changing its legal status, its halachic status, because now it becomes, according to the one who says you do need eged, you do need to tie it, taking something that wasn't usable as a hadas and now making it usable as hadas and lulav. And that change of legal status is similar to a physical change in status, like baking those grains. Okay, but Rav Huna, maybe he thinks that it doesn't need to be bound, and therefore I'm not really affecting any halachic change to it, so I'm not acquiring it. Or even if you think that, according to Rav Huna, I do need a tie, that's not enough of a change. It's not like grain where I'm mashing it, I'm grinding it and baking it. Here, I'm tying it up. I could just undo the tie and still the same hadas, still the same myrtle branch. So I didn't really change anything, and therefore it does not effectuate a change in its legal status. That's not considered a change, and I will not acquire it. Okay, a last question. Another way to make a change in something and thereby acquire it after I stole it is by a change in its name. When it's attached to the tree, it's called an asa, just a myrtle branch. But now that I take it and I join it together, and I'm going to use it for a mitzvah, it's called a hoshana. We don't usually call that anymore, but this was ancient. Now we just call it lulav, even though we're talking about all the species. But since we take the lulav and etrog while we're saying hoshana, so in the Talmudic times, they used to call the myrtle branch itself a hoshana. So you see, there's a change in its status because it has a new name, and a new name can effectuate a change in status that leads to a change in its legal possessions. Now it's mine, and I can use it. The answer is no. The truth is that people will call it Hoshana even while it's on the tree. Oh, so look at that beautiful Hoshanot. Let me cut some and take them. And therefore, since these other types of changes aren't really practical, don't really work, that's why Rav Huna told the merchants that the only real change that you can make is a change in hands. In order to have a change in hands, you have to make sure that it's the non-Jewish farmer that does the cutting, and at which point there'll be Yeush, because now it's movable, and then he will transfer the possession over to the merchant, and that transfer possession changes the ownership, and now the merchant actually owns it, and he can take it home and fulfill the mitzvah. So this is an interesting source that might be applicable to something, to stolen goods. It would mean that, look, for sure, if you know something is stolen for sure, this Prada bag, you can't buy it. But how far do you have to go to how many steps do you have to go to check the source and the source of the source? If there's some doubt, at least according to this source, I'm not saying halacha l'maaseh, but according to this source, at least it seems that it would be permitted to buy if it's only a case of doubt. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen ve'amen.